Right here behind me, we have 3 different weapons, all capable of killing deer. The first is going to be a compound bow that shoots this arrow. Next, we have a crossbow, which shoots a similar looking thing, but they're technically called a bolt and they're a little different. And then we have a rifle, which fires something like this. This is called a cartridge, a bullet, a shell, whatever you call it. You know how a gun works. But what are the pros and cons of each, and which one's actually the best? Especially if you guys are just getting started hunting, which one should you actually get? And I guess first thing, let's start off with the rifle. All right, so this is a rifle. In particular, it's a bolt action rifle with a scope, which means pretty much a sniper, however you want to call it. It's very precise, very accurate, and it has a lot of range. It can pick out a target really far away using the scope as a very precise way to put the bullet where you want. You can shoot deer up to 300 yards and even a little bit further if you're really good in practice with it. They'll shoot a bullet that looks something like this. This caliber right here happens to be a .308, super popular for deer hunting. So that's a basic overview of a rifle. What about the pros and cons? The pros, you have a lot of range and a lot of damage with this thing. Depends on where you're hunting. As long as you can see the animal and it's giving you a decent broadside shot, you can take that animal up to 200 yards or as far as you're good enough to hit it. But even a beginner with a rifle is pretty realistic to take out a deer at 100 yards, no problem. That means you can see a lot of area. Hint, these over here, they don't have that much range. So that's probably the rifle's biggest plus, is you've got a lot more range and a lot more power once it does hit it. They're also really simple to use. It doesn't take a ton of practice and you don't have to have a special form or anything to shoot it straight. As long as you can get the crosshair on your animal, slowly pull that trigger and bam, as long as your gun's sighted in, you're effective. Now here's the cons of the rifle. Depending on your state, so for example, you're probably going to have a shorter season and you may be limited as to what you can actually shoot with the rifle. For example, in my state, the season for the bow and arrow is like 5 months long, which is super long. And I can kill both a buck and a doe with the bow. So a lot of freedom with the bow. On the other hand, with the rifle, the season is cut down to only 2 weeks out of the entire year, and in my particular area, I can only shoot a buck with the rifle. So pretty much when it comes down to effectiveness, the rifle is a lot more effective. Because it's so much more effective, they usually limit you on what you're allowed to hunt and how long you're allowed to hunt with it. That is pretty much the only con to using a rifle. Besides that, these are a stinking killing machine, and they're super effective at hunting. But let's move on over to the other side, where we're talking about the compound bow. Now, there's also a thing called a recurve bow. That's pretty much a stick. And they work great too. But for this video, we're just gonna talk about a compound bow right here. Watch out! You know what I mean. Now, the compound bow, this is what I choose to hunt most of my animals with most of the time. And that's because, well, like I mentioned earlier, you have a lot more season. Let's go over the pros. You usually have a lot bigger season, and I can actually hunt does, so female deer with this. Depending on where you're from, you may be able to shoot them with a rifle anyways. But that all really depends on where you're from and your state and stuff. Another pro and a con at the same time, it requires a lot of practice and a lot of technique. But if you really like to hunt, hey man, practicing your technique for a hunt, that's fun. That's part of it. So I actually like using a bow because it is harder. I have to practice more. And honestly, gonna be honest guys, it gives me something to do because sometimes I get bored. But at the same time, that is a con. Because if you don't have a lot of time to practice and a lot of time to learn how to shoot it, it may not be the best option for you, because to be really good and comfortable with a bow, it does take a little bit of practice. The more you shoot it, the better you're gonna get. This is like a big technique thing. Another con, on a whitetail deer, you're pretty well limited to 40 yards, and maybe even less than that, depending on how jumpy your deer are. And that is because while the rifle over there, your bullet travels 3 times the speed of sound. The bullet literally gets there before the deer has any idea what happens. Your arrow is not going to move that fast. It's kind of slow, and it's actually slower than the speed of sound. So the deer can actually hear the bow go off before the arrow gets to it. And depending on your distance, I've had them at 40 yards. It's not even that far. I've had them at 40 yards, aiming perfectly at them. I shoot, the deer hear the sound, jump and turn, and by the time the arrow gets there, the deer is out of the way and I miss the deer completely. And my arrow went exactly where I was aiming. So with that being said, I would even say that a lot of times you're limited to 30 yards and in, which is, I know this, you may not be able to tell by the camera, but that little deer target over there, that's 30 yards. That's pretty close. With a rifle, I could extend 5 times that much and comfortably kill it. Also, this is a random pro and con. You be the judge. This bullet costs about $1.50, maybe $2. This arrow, once I put a broadhead, costs about $30 That's insane. And while yes, I can practice with this area over and over and over, pretty much unlimited, and not cost me anything. Whenever you're shooting an animal, you kind of just have to go into the mindset, no matter what you shoot at the animal, even if it is a really expensive arrow, you're going to break it. You just have to assume that, because it may go through the animal and you lose it. You may miss the animal and lose it. It may stick in the animal and it fall out and you don't know where it is. It may go in the animal and break. You just have to assume that this whole thing you're shooting at an animal is gone. A lot of times you will get it back, but sometimes you won't. These are expensive if you lose them. These don't cost that much when you lose them, but you lose them every time you shoot the gun. Is that a really big deal? That's up to you. Now moving on to the middle ground. And this is what I would suggest for beginners. Bam! Check it out. We are talking a crossbow. Now, there's a lot of different shapes and sizes of crossbows. This one just happens to be a pretty high-end one. But you can get them as low as like $300 to $600, and they are super good. So that's one thing. Overall, a crossbow isn't that expensive compared to the bow, which is a lot more, and the rifle, which you can get a giant range of rifles, cheap versus expensive, and they all do the same thing, by the way. But back to the crossbow. Let me start off with the cons then. You're still limited to range. I would say maybe you step back to 50, and the bolt is going faster, so the deer may not have as much time to jump. But let's even say realistically, you're narrowed down to 40. So range, a little bit further than the normal bow, but that's all. So yeah, you're pretty limited to range. Now let's talk about the pros. It shoots like a gun. So if you can shoot a gun, if you can aim down a sight, you can hold it steady, you can slowly pull the trigger, bam. You can shoot this accurately just like a gun. It kills them like crazy. Just like the compound bow. All these things kill them like crazy. So if you hit the deer in the vitals, all these things kill them like crazy. And kill them good. Like none of these are less lethal than the other if you shoot the deer in the right spot. Another pro, crossbow seasons, much like bow seasons, are really long and pretty free, like freedom. So with the compound bow, I can hunt 5 months out of the year. With the rifle, I can hunt 2 weeks out of the year. With this, I can hunt 4.5 months out of the year. So in some states, it's not exactly the same as a normal bow, but it's pretty dang close. I can also shoot does with this in my area, and it's quiet, okay? You like that? Say you're hunting your backyard, there is houses around. Shooting the big .308 rifle, that may cause a disturbance, you know. Shooting a crossbow, nobody even knows what happened. That's valuable sometimes. So if you guys are truly just getting started, I would say get you a crossbow if you just want to get out there and learn how to start hunting. Super fun, super effective. Definitely can get you killing your first deer. If you're not super deep into hunting and just want to kill a deer, and it's okay if you only hunt a couple weeks, bam, get you a good old rifle, they will stink and slam them. And you or your family probably already have a rifle you can use. Now, if you want to get real deep in hunting, you really like the idea of practicing and using perfect form and technique, and you want to make it a little bit harder, a little more sporty, I guess, maybe you do pick up a bow. You can go to a bow shop and pick up used bows for a lot cheaper. You're out there and now you gotta learn a new thing. You gotta learn how to shoot a bow, and that is fun. Whichever one you choose, they all kill. Click right here for the difference between a cheap versus expensive crossbow, or if you want to see if you want to know how to shoot a bow, click right here. I try my best to show you.